Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Monday, March 6th Board of Supervisors regular meeting. We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you. The adoption of the agenda, we need to amend the agenda and eliminate E6.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda after eliminating item E6, which I understand is now going to be an item for another day.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. School report, is Dr. Grimsley online?
Dr. Grimsley said she might be able to join online for questions. It doesn't appear she's there now. They're on spring break. So she's enjoying some time with her family. The school report is posted, as is the calendar. And if you haven't read the report, the girls basketball team is in the semifinal game tonight for state down in Highland. So good luck to them.
Starting at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, good luck. That's amazing.
I don't know if we want to get into it without Superintendent Grimsley being here, but I was wondering what the numbers are for summer camp enrollment. I've heard from some parents that it's pretty expensive, and wondered if we wanted to help with that for families facing those increased costs this year.
Do you know if there's a deadline for enrollment?
That I don't know.
So the board has multiple meetings coming up. Next meeting on March 15th. So we could circle back around with Dr. Grimsley and see if she can provide some more information on that.
Sounds
and then
good.
bring it to the board for consideration.
I'll reach out to her too. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. All right, quarterly VDOT update, Mr. Nesbitt. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here today, and appreciate the opportunity to present the quarterly report. Fortunately, this past winter has been fairly light, as everybody knows, and we been able to continue a lot of our maintenance activities unimpeded by any significant weather events. We have had occasional icy spots up in Chester Gap and up on top of Blue Ray Mountain, but otherwise it's been fairly clear. We're now in the process of kind of getting ready for the next season, which is mowing and pothole patching season, and just trying to maintain our gravel roads and trying to keep up with our work orders. And also we this summer we'll have a gap. We will not have a rural rustic project to complete this summer. We'll finish up Kaiser Run Road. We got a surface treat it. No, that was in Culpeper County. We finished all our rural rustics so we'll pick up Kaiser Run Part 2 next summer, and then we'll have our secondary 6-year plan update here coming up soon, where we'll decide whether we're going to be able to add any more roads to the plan. I also this time I submitted kind of went back through all our reports for last year and just sort of got a summary report. Just sort of added up all the different things that we did last year and put them into an annual report. I haven't done that before, but I thought it might be useful. And then also I handed Ms. Donahue a sort of a summary report of a crash history I just pulled off the the website of the motor vehicle department. So they carry 5 years worth of crash history on their website, and so I thought I may briefly go over that real quick and then answer any questions anybody may have. If you look to the right, and I apologize for not getting this in initially so you could have it but certainly you can put this in the minutes. But in 2018, 170 total crashes in the county, and then we've been trending down since then. 2019, there were 164, 2020, 156, 2021, 147, and last year there were 135, and then we've had 8 in the month of January. There were 8 total crashes. If you look at the fatality column, there was 1 in 2019. There were 2 crashes in 2020, one crash in 2022. So fatalities have fortunately been fairly light, and so far this year we haven't experienced any. Injury crashes, you can see those ranging from 27 in 2022 to 47 in 2019. I don't know if I can explain why 47 jumped up like that, but it is what it is. And then the PDO is property damage only. And so we're ranging from 110 in 2021 to 139 in 2018. But overall, crashes obviously are trending down, which is in the right direction. So hopefully we'll see that continue this year. But I sent previously our paving schedules for this coming year, so they should be in your records. And with that, I'll just open the floor to any questions anyone may have.
Thanks a lot for your report. I think Mr. Curry had sent me today. I just want to make sure. I was really curious because we had talked about it last year, the Holly Springs turn lane.
Yes.
On the eastbound side. Do you know if you came in at the estimated cost?
I believe we were under the estimated cost by, I think, 10,000. I don't have that number in front of me. I think we sent that information.
It was below forecast.
Yeah,
Okay.
below the estimated amount.
Okay, and my understanding was about $105,000 pending hydro seeding in the spring, something like that.
Right.
I'd have to look at the details.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's I think for everyone, including taxpayers and us, it's eye-opening to think that one turn lane going to a rural road actually costs $105,000 to construct. So I thought it was a really interesting test case just to have something tangible that has real numbers associated with it.
Sure.
So thank you. This is probably a naive question. I should know the process, but I'm going to ask anyway. Since we haven't had a flake of snow, presumably there's a lot of VDOT budgeted snow removal money that is going to go unspent. And I just wonder, just from an internal mechanism standpoint, if there's any way that any of those funds unused for snow removal might find their way into local projects.
Well, we've asked the same question, and Richmond is going to keep all snow money in Richmond until further notice, to make sure that they cover any other outstanding charges. Whether we get any of that back or not, it remains to be seen.
We've just guaranteed that we're going to have a big snowstorm by having this discussion,
Yeah.
probably. So, apologies.
Yeah.
And then my last question on ash tree removal, I just wonder, first of all, your local team, they've been terrific in going out and getting obvious trees that threaten the right of way and motorist safety. I'm so grateful to David Jenkins and others for responding almost on an on-call basis. But from a macro perspective, how is that going and what should we expect? Well,
we have a district-wide tree removal contract, which we hire the professionals to do it. We can remove trees of a certain size but we're not professionally trained to remove large trees using bucket trucks and things like that, or may create a safety issue. So we rely on our district-wide tree removal, and they get on a list, and then they get, as they go through the list, they try to organize it to be efficient as possible, but we typically, they get on a list and they get to it, as they come up on the list. and we'll continue that process. It seems to be working, okay. I haven't heard of any.
And I assume it's
complaints.
acceptable that if a tree does not fall into the category of one that would require professional tree removal folks, that it's still okay for us to contact your local team to address those
Sure, Yes.
lesser tree removal projects.
that's
Thank
definitely
you.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for this report. I have a question.
Yes.
Were there any months or series of months that stood out as times of heavier crashes?
I can't say that right now. I can do a little deeper dive on there and maybe and get you that information.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
My gut would think when we just visibly can see more traffic in the fall, we just have more, that would be the case, but it would be interesting to.
Yeah, it wouldn't take much to do a deeper dive and see what that looks like.
I would bet most crashes are deer-related, and so they're in the deer-related season.
Yeah.
Motorcycles,
Every day.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank Mr. Nesbitt for the, excuse me, the turn lane down there again on 211. I think that has given quite a bit of increased sight distance to that intersection. And for some reason, it was off the radar for a while. There was a complaint or two, and then all of a sudden, several accidents there. Almost kind of crazy how the coincidence.
Yeah, that's the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, anyway, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the swift work on 611. It seemed like nothing was gonna happen there, but it's in Culpeper County, but Waterford Road is from Rappahannock to Culpeper. And an individual working without permits had created a situation, a very dangerous situation with ponding on the road. And I think that y'all took care of that.
Yeah, we had to stay on it, but we finally made it happen.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I just had a question. Thank you for preparing this, Mark. I did have a question, just kind of doing the math. It looks like for every year prior to 2022, the PDO plus injury totals the total number for the year.
Did I mess up?
But for 2022, and believe me, I love it that it's trending downward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your 135 plus 27 plus 1 does not equal 135.
It's just a total.
So maybe it should be a
Yeah.
lower number under PDO, I'm hoping.
Right, there's 27 and 1 is 20, and subtract that from 135, and that's, I think it should be 107.
107?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
good.
right.
I like that even
I had a
more.
corrected version, but I did not, I
Well-
failed to go to the printer and get it.
It's always good to
Yeah.
brush up our math skills.
appreciate
Thank
you
you. I
finding that for
appreciate
me.
you, Mark. I was hoping that was the case and not the other way around.
I was just checking to see how closely y'all read this.
Yeah, I passed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My only question, one, thank you very much for everything your team does. It's amazing to me how much of an area they can get cleared up after storms as quickly as they do. I'm wondering the brush and there in some situations in my area anyway, there's parts of trees that are just on the edge of the ditch. And the best way to get that is to call the local number and get that on somebody's schedule to pick up, or?
Yes, if you could work through them, that certainly can contact me, but you can contact them and they'll work it in their schedule. They sort of prioritize that. They try to get debris that's right on that may be a hazard to on the edge of the road, but there's some still remaining that's within the right of way. Just let them know and they'll get to it
Okay.
as soon as they can.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Library Board of Trustees. There we go.
All right, first, I would like to thank you all for your continued support of the library. It has been an exciting year for us as we expanded library programming, increased library services, signed up 233 new library cardholders, and continued developing our collection to meet the needs of our community. This ever-evolving collection includes not only books, audiobooks, and periodicals, but also movies, musical instruments, STEAM kits with hands-on activities, adventure backpacks with everything needed to go on various outdoor adventures, and online resources including downloadable ebooks, downloadable audiobooks, language learning toolkits, resume and career resources, homework help, research databases, and much, much more. You have been provided a quick stats card with a snapshot of mostly 2022 fiscal year library statistics, which are all approaching or surpassing our pre-COVID numbers. During the last fiscal year, we had 11,111 visitors during library hours. We hosted 56 library programs for 617 attendees. There were 186 non-library uses of our meeting room. More than 10,000 wireless user sessions were logged. Our public internet computers were used 728 times, and 109 children participated in our youth summer reading program. Looking at monthly statistics for this fiscal year, so far, these numbers are again trending upward. I would also like to share some further details of things happening and highlights since our last presentation, as it has been a very busy and productive year for our little library. The library, in partnership with the Virginia Department of Health, distributed over 100 free COVID test kits early in the fiscal year. We worked with representatives from Sorensen Communications to obtain a no-cost video relay service device for patrons who are deaf and are hard of hearing. With the support of the Path Foundation and the Friends of the Library, we hosted another successful community event with a Grammy-nominated children's performer and free ice cream. We were awarded an IMLS LVA grant to purchase a privacy pod for the library. The pod allows individuals to conduct telehealth visits, participate in job interviews, make telephone calls, participate in electronic meetings, and study privately without any disruption. The pod has been reserved more than 100 times since it became available mid-August. This year, we expanded library programming, established an adult summer reading program, and hosted events for adult audiences. Our youth services librarian, Sharon Buchanan, diversified youth programming to include not only our weekly preschool story times, but also STEAM workshops for students of all ages, guided library tours, teen events, and other special programs. We continued and continue our partnership with the Headwaters Foundation to provide and promote Dolly Parton's Imagination Library and encourage early literacy in our youngest residents. Recently, we hosted well-attended and fun events, including a Dolly Parton Imagination Library one-year anniversary event with Headwaters and a local artist-instructed paint program for seniors. Upcoming programming and services include a puppet show on March 22nd, a seed swap collaborative program with the Rappahannock County Garden Club and the FOL on March 25th, a seed library for patrons throughout the planting season, a collaborative Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program with Headwaters and CCLC on April 1st, a tea party co-hosted with the Garden Club and the FOL later this spring, and many special summer events and reading programs for all ages. We have a lot to look forward to, and we appreciate your support as we do our best to deliver top-notch library programming, services, and resources to our community. Please reach out if you have any questions, concerns, or suggestions. Now, Victoria Fortuna, President of the Library Board of Trustees, would like to provide an update from the trustees. Thank you.
Thank you. The only real update I have for you is relating to the expansion and renovation project. As I reported last year, we were on pause. We sort of took stock in the work that we had done previously with the survey and with the architect, and we reached out to a number of landowners that surround the library and did some due diligence about what things would be available. And just recently, we made a decision to re-engage with the architect to refine and revise the design that's currently for the site that we're on. If you want to look at the old design work that he did, it's under the Rappahannock County Library Board of Trustees, who we are. If you page down to the bottom of the page, you can see that old work product. So we're in discussions currently with the architect, and we're hoping that by year end we have a final design for our library. We'll be inviting the community
to come in and look at the design and meet with the architect. And we'll also be reaching out to other stakeholders for their ideas about final design. And also, I wanted to publicly thank Gary for being a board member and for all his assistance. When he was a board member, he really helped us in so many ways in dealing with all the things that it takes to run a library. So we're very grateful for his participation, and we're really happy to have Bonnie on the board now as well. So I don't know if you have any questions for us.
Thanks for your presentation. And first, I just want to acknowledge Amanda. I mean, I know you're a children's librarian by background and perhaps training in it, and your influence is obvious. I mean, all the varied programs, especially oriented for children, are really awesome. So thank you for bringing your expertise to bear on the library and those programs in particular. Then my question to Victoria, not to put you on the spot, but you sort of blended in your presentation that you're re-engaging with the architect to look at what sounds like the current site and what could be done with it. Is that now the direction you're headed, and would that preclude you from moving?
That's the current direction we're headed. We're not saying that we wouldn't move. I mean, you know, if somebody came through with some incredibly wonderful offer, something like that, we would consider that as well. But at this point, we're, you know, looking at our current site and seeing if we can improve on what the architect originally prepared for us. So, because we weren't so happy with the design features of that program. But, you know, it was the first draft and it was a preliminary design, so.
And then the last thing I had is, it looks like in terms of total number of visits annually, it works out to 50 to 60 per day of library users. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And I just wonder, we haven't talked recently about staffing, and I just wonder if your current staffing is sufficient to take care of that number of visitors, which seems like a pretty big number for a small library.
At this time, yes, but as we expand programming, it may be necessary to expand our staff as well.
Okay.
We did have one long-term employee leave at the end of September, and Amanda was able to hire a replacement for her. But it has, you know, I mean, that, you know, it means that Amanda and the staff have to catch up because there's a lot of expertise that left the library. So we're working on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to say I'm glad to hear you're taking another look at how to use the library that you currently have. I can remember when that library was built, so I don't like to think of it as being very old. And, you know, in terms of being a public building, I think we should get more than 30 years out of a public building that was new construction. So I really do appreciate that. You're taking a fresh look at that. And as a building committee member, I commiserate with you on trying to find the right design and look forward to seeing what you come up with.
And you just take a look around, we don't dispose of buildings very quickly.
Yes, we weren't going to dispose of it. But
Thank you, Victoria.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, we're at the point of public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, if you'll please be recognized, and when you do come up, if you'll give us your name and your district, I would appreciate it. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Those Hampton District people are so eager.
Just welcome Karen back. Not really.
You got it.
Yeah. Well, not really. Address that to the next meeting. I am here to make two comments.
Name and district.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Judy DeSarno. I live in Hampton and in the metropolis of Washington, Virginia. I am a supporter of the boundary line adjustment, and I wanted to express how happy I am to see that real discussions are going on again about bringing the land into the town boundary, the small amount of land. I have to admit to have always been perplexed that this was controversial, as it's on the town boundaries and in both of the comprehensive plans. But I am pleased that it's moving forward. I am sorry it won't include housing when both comp plans talk about the need for housing. I've wondered about some of the antipathy toward the town with all of the signs that said no boundary adjustment. They mystified me. I did not have the nerve to go up and knock on the door and say, tell me why. I'd like to have a conversation about why. But we have a real economic, one of the biggest economic drivers in this county, in fact, the biggest, is tourism. And one of those drivers and the biggest, second largest employer in the county is the Inlet of Washington. And one of the things that I think people come to Rappahannock for is its beauty, and that includes the beauty of this little town. So worrying about the Architectural Review Board, which of course now bringing it into the town will be subject to that. Sometimes I think be careful what you wish for. But with respect to the new courthouse, you're talking about the shell. You can do what you want in the inside, but making it look like it fits into the town just adds to the beauty of the town, which is a part of what we're famed for. But I hope you move forward and schedule a public hearing. And again, I am so pleased to see that people are talking civilly to each other again. My second point is a bit of bragging about the Board of Trustees of the library, who made our biggest and best decision when we made Amanda Weekly the head librarian. I want to say all those increases of numbers are really due to Amanda and her training and her work and her enthusiasm. And I am very proud of, I think, the best decision we ever made as a Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else public comment?
Ron Mackler from Jackson District. The first thing I want to go over real quick is the appointment for the Public Safety Committee. And you've got two good candidates, but I think Sean Nick would be your best choice. He's been on the committee. I try to attend the meetings as often as I can, and I've always been very impressed with the way he handles himself, the way he deals with the issues, and he also has the background, so I would strongly encourage you to appoint him to the position. And then the next item is that in reading the county administrator's memorandum dated February 15th, 2023, my jaw dropped when I read the item dated February 10th. I'm going to read it to you. On February 10th, the CAO, that's Gary, received correspondence from VRSA informing the county that the $100,000 coverage limit was reached for the fiscal year 20 coverage year pertinent to CL 20-75. That's the Cappielli appeal. The staff is waiting detailed information from both our assigned attorney and the VRSA. Pleadings have been filed with the appeals court, and additional expenses will not be covered by insurance. $100,000. It's been spent in an attempt to find Mr. Cappiello guilty of violating a county zoning ordinance. And that amount does not include the cost for the time county staff members spent on this case. And it's not over. The county lost the first case, and now it's being appealed. When does it end? And will there be any kind of a cost benefit? Mr. Cappielli came to the county to run his business. And the nature of his business is such that it's not new to Rappahannock, but there are numerous other locations in the county that engage in similar activities, which is storage of equipment and materials in open space. It's not a pretty business. And it tends to be in rural areas, and we've got to learn to deal with it. And my question there is, why was Mr. Capielli singled out for a notice of violation when there have been these other operations been going on for years? The county has a bad track record when it comes to court cases. We remember Bragg 1 and 2 and the Lazinski-Koya case. How much have we spent in the last few years on court cases? It's, you know, and what are we gaining by spending all this money? In regards to the Capielli case going forward, I think that any future meetings on it or whatever should be an open session. I think the citizens should have the right to see exactly what's going on in these cases, even though it's a legal matter, the case is well known. In closing, I'd just like to say that can't we find a better way to spend our limited county funds? $100,000, I'm totally amazed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, I think I need to clarify that I was informed from the insurance company that they accidentally received a double bill from the law firm, and so we have not reached the $100,000 limit, although it's a lot. And of course, these aren't dollars being spent by the county; these are dollars being spent by the insurance company, as leveraged by our premiums.
Right.
And in the past, weren't there problems with getting things covered by insurance that, you know, we've really taken a lot of pains to rectify and make sure we have adequate coverage for any
Correct.
kind of legal representation? And I think that taxpayers need to know that we're very diligent about that.
Our change from Versa to VACORP helped with that, although this is being covered under Versa because this is so old, it's under Versa, but it was a zoning matter that was covered.
Yeah, so we do make great pains to make sure that things are adequately covered and not a burden to our taxpayers.
Good point. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
A little over a week ago, Paige Glennie from Jackson District. A little over a week ago, I sent you this chart on email, and I thought it would be valuable for me just to go through it and point out, because like in any monster analysis, it's hard to figure out all the details. As I pointed out in the email, you'll see that the percent of county responses to the percent of total expenses paid, all right, there's virtually no correlation between the two, all right? Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but there are some areas where we pay a lot of money and we don't get that many responses, all right? Also, the average cost per response does not correlate to the response time. Again, I can't explain all that, but it's considerably way off, because generally you're on an average of about 10 minutes regardless of the response. I also would like to point out the differences between companies 4 and company 5. All right, 5 being Castleton and 4 being Flint Hill. If you note that 5 fails to respond about 51% of the time, considerably lower response than company 4. All right, and its average response time is 19 minutes as compared to all the other companies, which are more in the 10-minute range, right? And if you look at the amount of money that's going towards the Stonewall Jackson district, or Stonewall Hawthorne district, excuse me, it's about Wakefield gets about 4.5 times more money than Stonewall Hawthorne district, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, all right, 19 minutes coming out of a company that's only responding a half of the time, all right? And we don't seem to be taking any action for that, all right? but we are taking action based on a call that has got a lot of publicity, all right, that was an 11-minute response from Chester Gap. All I'm trying to say is, I think you need to spend, in this budget season, I think you need to spend a little time looking at what you can do to help Castleton. I'm not saying take them over or do anything, there needs to be something. And I also say that putting the chase buggy at Company 4 in Flint Hill is not helping because you're adding around 5 minutes to get down to this area. If you look at the map, this box that's down here in this corner, all right, is not a good place to get to, all right? Madison's way over here at 15, 20 minutes away, all right? And 502, all right, which is up in here, all right? I wonder if part of that, because Amosville is second due in that, if the reason Amosville's response time average is up is because they're being called down into here, which is harder for them to get to, all right? But anyway, I'm not saying something needs to be happening with Castleton, all right? They're getting more volunteers, they're getting people certified, all right? That's a good thing, all right? But I just don't think that the residents down in this corner of the county are getting paid, getting the equivalent treatment to those in the northern half. If you look at the numbers, all right, we are focusing most of our resources on fire and rescue on the 211 corridor and north. We're pretty much ignoring the southern part of the county and to some extent the eastern part of the county. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else public comment? Not seeing any hands. Is there anyone in Zoom world wishing to speak during public comment? If so, please raise your Zoom hand to be recognized. All right, not seeing any Zoom hands raised, we will close public comment period.
Hey, Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Victoria, thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right, consent agenda.
Madam Chair, could we pull out the minutes for specific look?
For which one?
The minutes,
Just the whole agenda.
Oh, the whole agenda item, not one in particular. Certainly.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the consent agenda minus the meeting minutes, which have been pulled out by Mr. Frazier.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in,
I was wondering why we didn't receive credit card receipt details and Amazon details this month. I have a hard time voting on something when I don't have all that information.
That's my oversight. I should have sent that to you.
Did no one get it?
No, nobody on the board got it.
Okay, well then I'll abstain
all right,
for that reason.
all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we got
Madam Chair, my concern is with the meeting on the 26th, when the resolution was adopted by the board to remove the board of directors from Flint Hill and appoint 5 new members. And I think there needs to be some language in there about the length of time that it was initiated by Ms. Smith, but we discussed removing the one item from the resolution, and there's no mention of that I could tell. Maybe I missed it.
You're referring to the state police?
State police investigation, yeah, because
Investigating.
that really is a vital constitutional concern. this board is now on record of putting something in a document, a resolution, without the benefit of knowing whether or not that as the result of that investigation is going to be, factual for somebody being involved in something improper or illegal. So the board's actually violating a constitutional right of the people to be innocent until proven guilty or adjudicated so. I don't think it should have been in there at all. We argued for that. The board, in its infinite wisdom, a majority sought to keep it in there, and I think that we ought to explain that there were at least 2 members that were opposed to that.
So you're asking that the minutes be amended so that there's a statement to the effect that Ms. Smith had asked to remove that state police investigation related language from the resolution?
Correct.
Okay.
And also the county attorney stated that it didn't impact the rest of the resolution in any way, and there was no real reason that it needed to be included.
So do you, I really would rather the board not vote on something without having the words in front of you. And
We could put it off for another
I
month
would
if you wish.
recommend that you know, if you can shoot me, I can try to come up with the language and go back and listen to the audio. Or if you want to send me a suggestion that I can start with, then you can take it up at a future meeting.
You need a motion to table?
I move.
I don't think that's necessary. Just
Okay.
don't approve them and they won't be approved.
All right.
I appreciate that.
But I would ask you to approve the others then.
I move to approve the meeting minutes for the regular Board of Supervisors and organizational meeting dated January 4th, 2023.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And I abstain for reasons already given.
All right. That was the only thing pulled out of the consent agenda. Can move into, you ready? Okay. Now, going into appointments, Public Safety Committee Citizen Representative.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question as a point of order? Was Mr. Estes, did he notify the Public Safety Committee or the board or the county administrator that he was no longer wishing to serve on this committee?
We did not receive anything in writing from him, no.
So wouldn't he continue in that position until such a time as he made that known that he did not wish to continue?
It's at the will of the board, from my understanding. I did meet with Mr. Estes, and he said that he was thinking about he's retired from work, and was considering dropping off from the Public Safety Committee.
So it's already been decided by the Public Safety Committee that this position was going to be filled by another, create a vacancy and then fill it?
The Public Safety Committee has not met this year.
Well, how did we
It's
know
my
that?
understanding
So I
that the
don't
Board of
understand how that doesn't-
Supervisors
Yeah, I don't
has the
understand how
right.
there became a vacancy.
That's,
It's my understanding, just to expand on Ms. Donahue comment, it is our discretion. There's no term limit, and it's my understanding we may appoint a citizen representative at our will. And it sounds like Ms. Donahue's talked with Mr. Estes, and he's indifferent about continuing to serve. And to her point, the Public Safety Committee meeting hasn't met. I'll go ahead and move that we appoint Sean Nick as a public citizen representative to the Public Safety Committee.
I'll second.
a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah, I have confidence in both of the individuals that have put forward, their name and nomination, but Normally, this would be the citizen representative would be somebody that's not so involved in fire and rescue already, like members of certain agencies. At least that's what it's been in the past. And now we're appointing someone that's been a previous chair and a previous representative from the Fire and Rescue Committee, and very active, I believe, in Company One. So I just want to know, are we just agreeing with somebody so that we have a monolithic public safety committee instead of a public safety committee with different voices?
I read the qualification criteria that we use for this appointment in particular, and note that direct law enforcement and fire and rescue related experience is one of the key criteria for selecting a member of the public to serve as our citizen representative, and certainly Mr. Nick has precisely that, and I've moved for his appointment, I'll say with great enthusiasm.
Any other discussion?
It says a citizen with experience in law enforcement, fire and/or rescue or incident management.
Right. He
So it
seems
could
to
be
cover it all.
any number of things that they could come from in their background.
I think Mr. Nick is a fantastic candidate, and thank you for putting in an application.
No,
Absolutely.
I think we have two excellent candidates, and it's very difficult to choose when you have two. And I didn't realize that Mr. Estes hadn't put in his own notice. I'm really reluctant to remove him, as I've served several years with him on that committee, and he does an excellent job.
Closed discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
All right. Moving into old business, Company 4 monthly report to the board and community. Chief Gerald?
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to come back and talk to you about the progress that we're making. I believe we're making solid progress based on items that were identified in the resolution that we should take care of, and just things that have to occur around a firehouse and EMS house to ensure that we're operating properly and that we can be responsive to the community. So last Friday, after a lot of hours, I can't even count how many hours we've put into this, but we've been able to reestablish Ambulance 1404 as a response vehicle for EMS calls. And what we did was we teamed with the county because we could not operate the ambulance independently. We couldn't do that because of the EMS license issue from last March. And we were told that we would not get that license back until we could prove ourselves worthy of holding a license like an EMS license. And there's a lot of responsibility associated with that. So I met with, I think I mentioned last time, I met with a lot of people, folks in Richmond by email and by phone, with Dr. Jenks, with Gary Curry, with Sean Polster. And we came up with a strategy where we would operate under their license, and then by default, we affiliate to them to be able to run EMS calls, where they provide the provider, and we provide the apparatus, and we provide the driver. So the idea is someone has an EMS call early in the morning, we get a driver to the station. If not already there, they drive the ambulance to the address, and ALS 1400 takes on the responsibility of being the provider. And so we're working through that process now. I mean, we're actually, if we get dispatched on a call, that's the way we'll respond. To get there, I provided you some read-ahead material. I don't know if you were able to see those or not. I think they were posted on board docs. They were on the screen. What I was trying to do is find a creative way to illustrate all these different things that have been going on at different times, because there are so many layers in this. So I created 4 different phases of key activities to make sure that this was possible. And for future activities in EMS to be possible. Because today we're operating under the county's EMS license, but that's not the intent, is to stay there. The idea is for us to regain our own license through Dr. Jenks and through Virginia OEMS in Richmond. So this is we'll call it a stopgap. It's our ability to run calls today. After 11 months of no EMS services coming out of our Flint Hill firehouse, we have that capability today. I declare that a win, but we're the ones doing the work. So, you know, the community will test that idea. So we have different processes that we've identified, from working with the county, working with Richmond, working with everyone else, to make sure that we have certified drivers. That's our key today. Certified drivers with an ambulance that has up-to-date equipment and the apparatus itself is capable of going down the road. So I had, in different instances, I had 8 different people inspect, including an ER doctor, several of the county's paramedics, 2 chiefs, myself included, and we were looking for expired material, because remember, the ambulance hasn't run for 11 months. And so it's always interesting when every time we checked that ambulance, we found something new that was expired. And there's a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of resources on an ambulance. Some expire, some don't. A backboard, for example, doesn't expire, but bandages and saline and things like that do. So we had to go through and just keep refreshing. Now, one thing that we decided to do in working with Sean and the paramedics is, even the stuff that's being discarded isn't being discarded. It's out of service, but we found use in it by using it as training aids when we have either station or refresher training there at the station. So we'll find use even in the expired items to some extent. So we're postured and ready to run those calls. We're running, since I last spoke with you, we're running fire and tanker and brush fire calls as they're dispatched. We're getting out the door. We had a brush fire on Saturday, and we had a a chimney fire last night, and got out on both of those, and all of the other calls that have been dispatched. So we're making progress in that regard. As far as membership goes, I talked to you last time about the fact that we had, I think at the time I mentioned that we had 26 applicants that had applied to become new members. And if there were a stretch goal in that, the stretch goal would be 30 and 30. 30 new applicants in 30 days. And I counted the number of applicants before I came here this afternoon, and we have 31. So we're right at about that point. We're actually in day 38 of this transition, or this assignment, and so we are working every day, literally. The weekends don't count for us. These are work days for us, whether we're in the station or we're at home, because it needs it. And quite frankly, every firehouse in the country, every EMS house in the country is doing the same thing. It's what is deserved to provide the kind of service that we should provide to our communities. And so we want to make sure that we keep pace with everybody else in the county, in the state, and in the country. So we're getting there. As far as there was a discussion at some point about financial statement audits and the annual audits that occur, and rightfully so. So what we have done is we're under a consent order where we have certain sort of limitations in, for instance, only spending money for day-to-day sort of emergency repair kind of things. So for instance, the batteries on the fire truck went dead, fire truck would not start. That's a bad thing. So we had those replaced that day, and so that's what we would consider a day-to-day expenditure. But anytime that we spend a penny in the firehouse, there's a requisition form that's generated from the operational side of the house, which is on my side of the house, and it's given to the administrative side of the house, which creates an audit trail in the process of requirement, approval, and then to a disbursement. But when the requisition form comes to me, I send it to the president of the company, who hands it down to our director of finance and then our treasurer who actually makes the check or makes the payment. So in that cycle, we have complete auditability of that money spent. And so we're exercising that on a daily basis. And then I spent a fair amount of time, again, with Sean and with the folks in Richmond, and I wanted to make sure and express appreciation, basically on behalf of the county, but definitely on behalf of our company, that they were willing to be patient with us, to allow us to keep that grant equipment that I talked about last time, which was the life pack and the cot system that we use, the Stryker cot system, because it's a lot of money. And why spend county money when we can get grant equipment? And so keeping that equipment was, to me, a very important thing. And so we were able to do that. And I wanted to express my appreciation for their tolerance and their willingness to work with us. So that's what I've got today. If you have any questions.
Thanks very much for the update.
Yes, sir.
And congratulations on working as quickly as you all have to get things back on track.
Yes.
Regarding ambulance 1404, so my understanding based on your explanation is that you'll have a certified driver and then that person would drive solo to a rescue call and then be met by ALS 1400. A couple of questions there. How many certified drivers do you have on?
I'm actually reviewing that now.
Okay.
And what we have to do, there's a process called EVOC. It's an emergency vehicle operator course that each prospective driver gets put through.
Okay.
And they have different levels. Level 2 is required for an ambulance. Level 3 is required for a fire truck, as an example. So there are different levels. Because they finish the class does not make them a driver. They have to go through a release process. And what we do during the release process is make sure that they get at least 10 hours behind the wheel, driving that apparatus, that ambulance that they're going to drive. And in our process, when we put them through that cycle, we have them, they're going to be driving me to each of the area hospitals because we need to know that they know how to get there. They know how to get in the door. It's nice to get to the hospital. If you can't get in the door right away, then you've got a problem. So they're going to go through that. And then we're putting each driver through a orientation or a refresher of where all the equipment is. Not that they're going to administer it to the patient, but when a paramedic tells them that they need to get them some piece of equipment off the apparatus, they need to know where to get it because the paramedic needs it now. I mean, it's sort of a right now kind of thing. So we have a training regiment that we're putting them through, and then we have the groups. So to give you a finite number is a difficult thing right now. I'm going through and I'm looking at historically all the different training records to see if they have the requisite training and turnover process. If they do, then they're in theory a driver, but we have to check that process.
So let's just say, just make it really specific. Say tomorrow 1404 is back online.
Yes.
Do you have certified drivers who are ready to go?
Yes, and I'll walk out the door if a call comes in right now.
Okay. And
Because that's where we're at. We're starting at ground level of a driver, and we're going to make sure that all of the other drivers are trained and certified and qualified because we have to offer that due diligence because we're putting the community's life in our hands.
and then setting aside ALS 1400's role in these calls that will be joint in nature.
Yes.
Setting aside ALS 1400, would it follow that your certified drivers ought to live within X number of miles of Company 4 to ensure a response time that includes both the chase vehicle and ALS 1400 and an ambulance within a reasonable time period? Sure.
The idea of distance to the firehouse or the EMS house, as in the case of Company 7, I haven't seen any criteria that says you have to live within so many miles. The criteria that's been established is the response time after dispatch. Okay. So you have so many minutes to get to the station and mark yourself ready or responding. And that's, as far as I know, that's the only criteria that I've seen.
Okay. And then on the, I did have a follow-up question since you brought up the question of finances, and you mentioned in passing a title that I've not heard in the context of fire and rescue, and that's Director of Finance. Is that synonymous with outside independent bookkeeper?
No, it's a title that I use. It's somebody that knows about money more than I do.
Okay.
And the idea is that over time, we leverage that person to make sure that our finances are managed correctly.
And how is that person different than the treasurer who's a member of your board of directors?
So our treasurer writes checks on invoices that are received. That's really what they do.
Okay.
Nothing more, nothing less. But we have multiple accounts in Company 4, just maybe like other companies do. And so if we're, for instance, paying for the making a tanker payment, that money needs to come out of a very specific account. Where if we're buying new batteries for a fire truck, it may come out of a different account. The treasurer only knows what they're told to do, and that is to write that check. This person who's directing finances, and that's my term of endearment, is telling them which account to leverage. And as we go forward, we may find whether donations increase or monies increase into the company. We want to make sure to have a smart money manager focusing their sole attention on those kinds of issues.
So is it correct for me to conclude then that there could be a scenario where you have a bookkeeper who populates QuickBooks with your revenue and expenses, and then you have someone who oversees sort of big picture financial matters, but then a treasurer who signs checks?
Yes.
Possibly 3 individuals who would be in that chain of decision making and disbursement of money.
Actually, you could increase that number to 7 or 8. And the reason I say that is because we do have a board, and that board has discussion and will have discussion in the future about how money is spent in our company. So you really have a lot of eyes watching where money is spent.
Okay.
But as importantly, as I mentioned before, right now I believe, Gary, that we're the only company being audited every year.
Correct.
Based on past failed audits. And so we wanted to, as we talk together, this new board, we wanted to make sure that we offer due diligence towards money management and the movement of monies. And so having this kind of diligence on that focus, it alleviates any perception of impropriety. It just makes sure that we have the right people watching the right things, doing the right things with the money. The people on the operational side, if you can imagine an organizational chart where there's a delineation down the center of it. On the left side is operations, on the right side is administration. People on the operations side aren't spending money. They have a need and they may have a want, but they identify that through this requisition process. It's the people on the right side in the administrative that make sure that the money is spent. There's no value proposition to that person on the right. So the idea is you keep that separation between the two. And it's working for us. Now, with regard to the audits every year, it's not that we're going to say that it's time for the county or for anybody to do annual audits on us. What I think is going to happen is like what's going to happen in EMS, where we don't declare that we're ready for a EMS agency license. It's Dr. Jenks that's going to make that decision based on his observations of our operation. Likewise, in the finance, is that the county administrator, the fire levy board, Sean Polster himself as the emergency services coordinator, they're going to make the observations necessary to say, you know, they've got command and control of finances to the point, and we're comfortable with what they're doing, that we don't have to audit them every year. So we don't make those declarations. We're hoping that the people observing and watching, and there are a lot of people watching, and we understand that, and we respect that. But we'll expect that they'll make those declarations.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that very thorough update.
Yes, sir.
I
Thank
have
you.
been fortunate enough to stop by a few times in the past couple of weeks, and I'm just thoroughly impressed with how much progress you guys have done. And I just want to say congratulations on 1404, and you have my total and full support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I could make a couple comments. Mr. Joe, you remember last month when you made a presentation to this board? You do remember that, right?
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.
Okay. You stated, you were talking about some referenced items, the stretcher, which is some sort of assist lift. I'm not sure what the exact title of it is.
It's called the Stryker system.
Stryker system, right? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And the AED Life Pack 15, I believe it was.
Yes, sir.
And you said that you had basically just become informed of the serious nature that involved those pieces of equipment, that because Company 4 had not been operating as an EMS agency, that they were in violation of the grant.
I didn't use the word violation.
Well, all right, I did, but they weren't following the grant.
The intent of,
All right, let me stop for a second. I don't want to get into semantics like we did last month. But you made a statement. You said at the 18-minute mark of the video, you said that the state was going to come back and get those items. You said it's going to happen Friday. They're ready to come pick that stuff up.
okay.
And in fact,
I haven't watched the video, but okay.
but you said that.
Okay,
You remember saying that?
sure.
You do remember saying that?
Yeah, sure.
All right, but I got emails from you, I got emails from Mr. Curry, and I got emails from Mr. Michael Berg, the Virginia Department of Emergency Services, and that's not correct, is it?
No, that is true. I was told that it was going to be collected if we did not get this service.
No. The email traffic that you provided, that Mr. Curry provided, and that Mr. Berg provided, they were saying that it should go to another agency within the community so that it could be used in the community in which it was granted for.
But by default, we're losing the equipment, so they were coming to get the equipment.
No, they weren't coming to get it. They were recommending that you could have gave it to Company 9 or Company 1 or Company 3, and it still would have been used maybe in the community in which it was granted for.
Right. But what,
But I have emails here to you, to Mr. Bailey, Mr. Curry is copied on it, and Mr. Polster, that in fact, before you came to this meeting, they had already given you 30 days to work through that process, and they never had said that they were coming to get it.
no, they didn't give me 30 days. What I was told is that it was imminent that they were going to come and get the
Not
equipment.
according to the email traffic. Where did you get that information?
We also had telephone
But
conversations.
the telephone conversations do not have any bearing on this because the email traffic says that it's completely contrary to what you presented to this board.
The 30 days was presupposed that the board was going to allow them to leverage the license. If that didn't happen, the 30 days is off the table.
But they had already said that they wanted another agency within the community to receive that equipment until such time as they may get their license back, and then it would be reviewed again.
The life pack might be able to be leveraged. The striker cot that's bolted into the ambulance and everybody else has them.
Yes.
But they said that you could give it to another agency in the community.
I couldn't give it to anybody because it wasn't my equipment.
But the emails from the people that are in charge of don't smile at me, sir. I'm trying to be serious here. I'm asking you a question, something that you stated standing there a month ago. You said they're ready to come get it. It's going to happen Friday. And in fact, the emails do not correlate with that.
I don't know which emails you're reading, one. Two, there were multiple conversations on the phone where we talked about these things. And sir, I got to tell you, I was taught to be respectful of people, and you're just not being respectful at this point.
No, listen, wait a minute. When you come before this board and you give us erroneous information or information that is not credible, that cannot be backed up by the email traffic, then you're the one that's not being respectful.
No, that's not true.
Mr. Fraser, I'm just wondering where you're going with this.
I'm just trying to make a presentation here that we had somebody that came up here and gave this body erroneous information.
That's not true.
My understanding is that the state basically told through email to Sean and myself, and I'm not sure if Mr. Gerald was on at that time, that the time had come and there's no more time to delay this.
That's referenced in here.
And then Sean went to bat and said, listen, this is a fluid situation. We're trying to work it out. And what we'd really like to do is get the ambulance under the county's license. And if we just allow us to do that, and they said, okay, 30 days.
But it
presupposing
already-
that license.
They,
And
they
then-
referenced that.
This says, and Mr. Gerald, in my recollection of these emails, said that he's had phone conversations with
Yes.
Mr. Berg, and I, assuming, I wasn't privy to those conversations, that in those conversations, there was a conversation related to, if the board doesn't let you do this license thing, you got a week,
Yes.
which is consistent with their earlier message, which was, time's up.
That's not in here. The statement in here from Mr. Berg, it was initiated by Mr. Doug Layton. He makes he puts the idea forward that they could use the equipment in the same community, just another agency that is already an EMS provider. So Mr. Berg puts that forward, that's what will probably happen. Not that they're coming to get it on Friday.
I agree with that, and as I noted, the striker cot is just can't just be taken out and stuck in another ambulance. They all have them.
Well, that's what the recommendation was.
It doesn't matter what the recommendation is if you can't fulfill it. Now, the
I'm not
Life Pack
talking about
15
that,
would be
that's a
different.
different subject. I'm talking about what they said and what we were told. They're not the same thing.
Is the equipment now part of Company 4 and no longer at threat of being removed from Company 4?
It will, I imagine, I don't know. But the idea is that it's there for the grant period or until it expires. Because they have shelf life or useful life.
I think the agreement on behalf of OEMS was that if you get this ambulance back on the road and it's serving the community, then we're done talking about it.
Sounds like it worked out well. Good.
So
Yes, it did work
OEMS
out well.
was okay. I know there were two things relating to Company 4 on the agenda last time. And one was positioning 1400 there, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., which we
That has not
decided
happened.
not to do as a board.
I think the board said, before you do that, bring data to us to show that that's the best way to do it.
And so, but the second part of that, we did vote through, which was the relettering of the
Which
truck.
was license the ambulance under the county's EMS agency license. And that has happened. OEMS has granted a 90-day variance so that the ambulance can run without being lettered, just so it's not an impediment. So that has to happen within 90 days. They've also issued a variance that would allow in the future the ambulance to run as an ALS unit with a driver and paramedic only for a year, as opposed to an EMT and a paramedic.
And OEMS was okay with that report back,
Yes,
and we've bridged a way to work through and retain that equipment.
correct.
Yes.
And I know I've talked to so many people, they're excited to see the work that's being done, the doors are open, the equipment's moving around, the EMS side of things, they really are hopeful that everything will end up being a Flint Hill rescue ambulance, but I don't think if we end up having to put Rappahannock on there that the citizens are going to care.
It's not, my understanding is that it's not a county choice, it's a state requirement through Virginia OEMS that essentially whichever agency holds the EMS license, their name has to be the dominant name on that apparatus. I think they're being generous that it's happening on the two sides of the ambulance and not the front and the back. So they're still identifiers for Flint Hill Volunteer Company.
Please make sure your team hears a sincere thank you from me anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, in conclusion, I just want to let you know that I do listen and I do check on things.
Sure, sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Moving into the town boundary line change request.
Madam Chair, for no other reason than to lead off discussion, I move that we authorize county staff to advertise for a public hearing April 3rd, 2023, purpose of which will be to receive public input on the current draft boundary line adjustment agreement between Rappahannock County and the town of Washington. And that latest draft is appended to our materials for today. And I believe it's the same draft version that I had put forward a month or so ago. So the motion is to schedule a public hearing on the 3rd of April, 2023, to get public input on the draft.
And this is the draft that the town sent back.
With no changes, as I understand it.
No, there was a change.
I'll second that motion.
Madam Chair, for discussion.
Yes, sir.
The problem, and we do it repeatedly, it appears that decisions are already being made, so we have a motion and then a second, and then we have to try and talk ourselves back from a point, sometimes a point of no return. But I think we should have had some discussion about this document before we go forward with a motion and a second for a eventual vote. But what we have is this is at least the second time in the last few months that the town has shown that they have little respect for this board. And in fact, they did it once with the trail when Mr. Curry had brought it to the board and said that he had discussed it preliminary with town council or mayor or somebody, and told them that it could only be a temporary type thing. And then the town council sends us paperwork through their attorney that basically said that if we granted them this easement, that they would have power of veto over county projects on the same property. And we had told them through Mr. Curry that that wasn't going to happen, but they didn't have any respect for us, and they sent us something like that. And now, I think it's been a sticking point with you and Mr. Whitson that this property not allow for future residential development. They just recently amended their ordinance to put this property in commercial zone, which does not have residential by right, but it just did, and now it doesn't. And they send back language saying that the only uses that will be there are uses allowed by right. Well, 6 months after the boundary adjustment that y'all think doesn't allow residential construction on that property will then be amended again to allow residents by right, and they have just circumvented what this board had asked for. Now, I don't know if that is what y'all are actually looking for, and you're trying to create this paper trail that says one thing when it's actually another, but that is very disrespectful to what this board sent forward if the objective is to not have residential construction on that property.
Yeah, it's a good comment, and I did attend the town council meeting in the town of Washington, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but my understanding is that they have adopted within their zoning ordinance a new zoning district or zoning category, and I believe that that language embedded within that new zoning district definition does preclude the construction of residential units even by some special use or other sort of exception application. I believe it precludes the ability of the landowner to even ask for an exception to the rule, which is, as you pointed out, no residential development. Am I wrong about that?
But they can amend it. They amended it one way now, they can amend it back a different way 6 months or a year from now. So that's not containing the language that was sent to them by this board. They could agree to that property would not have any residential construction, and it would have been much simpler than the hoops that they jumped through to get to the point that they are now. It would have been much less work. They did what they did deliberately. And we're sitting here trying to figure out if what I'm talking about is a possibility. It is a possibility, and it's most likely a probability because they deliberately did what they did. They didn't take the language that you had championed. They took that out and inserted this other process that they deliberately went through hoops to do.
It puts it back in the town control.
Unfortunately, I can't see the screen.
Yeah, so what I gather is the concern is that the town took the action that's on the screen of passing a resolution stating that there should the property commonly known as Rush River Commons 2 be brought into the town of Washington through a boundary line adjustment concluded with the county that said property shall be zoned commercial and any development on the plot shall be restricted to the uses allowed by right in such zone. And I understand the concern to be that if the town council can adopt a resolution, they can adopt another resolution at some other time to change this even after the land is brought in.
They did this, they deliberately removed the language that Mr. Whitson had put forward and did this. So it was a deliberate move. It's not an accident. It wasn't and or, it was specific. They took one thing out and did something different.
What the town representatives has told the board is that they don't want there to be a precedence of any time a boundary line adjustment happens, that there are these other things that are tacked onto the side.
I can't
That's
believe
why
that-
they didn't want it in the
I can't
ordinance.
believe that these things this would be a precedent in a boundary line
I'm
adjustment.
just saying, that's what they've said.
They've said that, but they haven't proved that.
I don't know.
But the trouble is, we would have to go out and pay money to prove that it does happen, that it did happen. At some point in time, all kinds of communities have come together with different agreements, and they've worked through these things. And they keep saying that they don't want to do this for that. Well, what they did was very, very prejudicial to our position. They took out the language that was specifically sent them, jumped through a couple of hurdles, and came back with this that they can amend at any time later in the future.
I think, and I appreciate you having my back. I really do. I just let me tell you kind of how I view it. So, as Mr. Curry pointed out, we had sort of these things that we were trying to clean up with the town because we had an opportunity, this boundary line adjustment being perhaps a vehicle to simplify some primarily zoning related matters with the town that, some of which will probably help with our courthouse row work. And so just backing up a little bit, the town responded last summer that they really preferred that we address those other things separately. So that's what we did. So then the version at our last meeting that I brought forward for review of our board was a boundary line adjustment agreement that no longer had within it any of the call them the seven things we were hoping to resolve with the town. One of which was no additional housing units on the corner, and because they had taken the approach that the agreement should be streamlined and not have add-ons, so to speak, they took various legislative actions, and again, I attended the meeting to address one by one each of those. And with that resolution, the resolution there is premised on the notion that the zoning of that property, subject to the boundary line adjustment, the premise of that entire resolution is their agreement with us on the boundary line adjustment. So the way I look at it is whether it's a question of houses or the question of a moratorium. That was another thing we asked for, a moratorium on further boundary line adjustment requests for some period. All those things, certainly town council could come back to us tomorrow and say, we changed our mind, would you reconsider? I assume that they could come back to us anytime, and a different board than ours currently might respond differently. But I feel quite comfortable with the way this resolution is written, because I think, although you're right, we took a more direct approach initially. The resolution and then the related zoning ordinance language that they've adopted, I think, accomplishes the same goal. And I do believe that they're bound by our agreement with this current board.
No, they're not. There's nothing in that that says that. They're only bound by their own ordinance. All they have to do is amend their ordinance, and they would do that
right
without any input from this board.
But I mean, and maybe Mr. Goff could weigh in if it would be helpful, because the way I look at it is all of these other add-on items that we've now backed out of the agreement language itself, all of those items are premised on an agreement between the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors and the Town Council with respect to each of those items. And I don't believe it's in the spirit of of a potential agreement for the town to say, oh, you know, we unilaterally changed our mind and we're actually going to allow houses to be built there. I don't believe that's the intent, and I believe that the ordinance language coupled with this resolution and the starting premise that this is all part and parcel of the boundary line adjustment agreement leads us to the same place, which is
I have to strongly disagree, sir. If it does not have anything about that in writing, then 6 months or a year from now, it's totally unenforceable.
So when,
well, I want to thank you for raising it and having my back in this regard. So maybe
when
we
the
could ask
board
our
talked about it
attorney.
before, there was this thought of maybe there would be a parallel agreement. And I think, just talking without having conferred with Mr. Goff, that the board could advocate for two agreements, a boundary line agreement, and then a parallel agreement that references all of these resolutions, and basically says that the you two are locked together so that the town agrees that they're not going to change their position on these resolutions that they've already
Then that would make
voted
it,
for.
Yeah,
would-
to
that
then-
would- but
without-
right now, it's unilateral.
And there probably should be an out that in 50 years, that, you know, the two bodies can come together and make some different agreement, but, which I think is always possible if the two bodies come together. But I think it would be hard to develop agreement around these actions taken by the town to memorialize them as a joint understanding of what's going to happen going forward, and that they can't change unless both groups come back together.
I mean, that's the kind of procedure that happened 40 years ago with the land swap of the two buildings here.
Oh, apparently, with the deed restriction and all that.
Yeah.
No,
So,
you raised a good
if the
point.
board would like, then, you know, Art and I can work on that. I think it'd be rather
That-
simple.
that is the
because language
precedent.
is wrapped up in the resolution.
We've already done that type of stuff. That is the precedent with these
Okay.
two
Yeah,
bodies.
I appreciate
I think we can
your
do that.
perspective, and it also, I suppose the other, I'm getting out on a limb here, is not being an attorney, but it occurs to me that there could also be dropped into the agreement itself some operative language that refers back to the however many number of separate legislative actions by resolution were adopted by the town council as binding within the confines of the agreement.
And we just attach them.
Yeah, that'd be another way to do it, but I agree. Yeah, I think, in a nutshell, what you're saying is there's a missing piece, and your point is well taken.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Don't always get my point out and get it across properly.
No,
but-
you did well.
So we have a motion, a second, we're in discussion. Do you want to,
I don't believe that any of this discussion leads to a need to amend the motion to schedule a public hearing. And it seems like staff can work out whatever missing piece might be required to make those legislative actions binding within the.
I mean, if Art and I are going to work on that, we just want to make sure it's very clear expectation that that's what you want us to do.
That has to be part of that
Okay.
public hearing.
Have it ready and
So I will.
present it to the town, maybe before their next.
Yeah, okay,
Might be hard.
I'll go ahead and amend my motion. So, it's a two-part motion. Part one, I think by consensus, we ask county staff, including the county attorney, to develop, call it, linking language to make the recent legislative actions of the town, binding within the parameters of the boundary line adjustment agreement. And then part two is to schedule a public hearing for the 3rd of April, 2023, so we can hear from the public and get their comments on the draft agreement, whatever additional language will be developed under part one of my motion.
Mr. Carney, are you okay with that?
Yes, I will second his amended motion.
All right, so we have a motion, amended motion. Yes, sir.
That April 3rd date, is that,
The regular Board of Supervisors.
board on a Monday night?
Yeah.
I will be in Norfolk for Spring Institute. Is that date critical, or it'll be possible to do it on the May regular meeting?
Our special meeting.
Are you,
Could even do, as Madam Chair says, a special meeting for that purpose. I think I ought to be here, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just interjecting, but I think May would be good enough. It's not that far off. Just an additional 30 days.
or,
It gives us plenty of time to flesh out the wording of the document that we're looking for.
That would be May 8th, I think. May 8th is a budget meeting, May 1st.
May 1st is your regular meeting.
I'm just trying to think, do we have anything else that could comprise a special meeting during the interim period?
Well, we have a
Budget.
number of meetings that you will be having for budget.
I just think in light of the importance of this issue and that we haven't really done any of this business in the evening session, I think it should be held at a regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting. I think special meetings can be challenging for people to get to. They're not predictable and, we should be here, like the Batman used to say, same bat time, same bat channel. And for important land use decisions, that means unless it's a holiday, we're here in the evening of the first Monday of the month.
Art, is there anything that would preclude you from participating via WebEx or Zoom, or are you just totally?
It should be 7 o'clock as a public hearing.
I don't, the problem is,
We can,
I don't do the computer stuff too well. That just, I wouldn't depend on it.
I would just like to also see what we're voting to advertise for a public hearing before we advertise it
Well,
for a public hearing.
the public hearing would be on the draft agreement as attached, as provided by the town. It has to be the same exact version that the town advertises for public hearing.
Yeah.
That's a threshold matter, and that's to receive, in order for it to be able to move beyond that public hearing, it have to be exact same document.
So that would be the February 6, 2023 addendum?
It's attached and it says, between town and county endorsed by the board, from town at the very end of it.
okay, so I think to be on the safe side,
Mr. Whitson, we do have a budget meeting in the evening on the 17th of April.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ms. Smith that you've tried to combine things with budget meetings in the past and,
Too much?
well, it's just, people just aren't on that frequency.
Let's just do it in May.
okay, yeah,
There's plenty
and
of time. Mr. Goff can join us.
I think because of going back to Mr. Frazier's point and how this might be accomplished, it could be, to Ms. Smith's point, that the agreement itself makes the most sense as the place that would incorporate additional language to link.
If the town is agreeable to that, in the past, they have not been agreeable to that. So it would have to be a separate agreement.
What I mean is,
Right.
yeah, I mean, we're talking about just a reference to things that we put outside of the agreement. So, all right, I'll amend what's the regular May meeting?
May 1st
May 1st.
in the evening.
All right, so part 2 of my earlier motion is amended. Part 1 remains the same, May 1st. This has been a great cognitive test.
I will second my motion.
The amended motion?
Friendly amendment.
Yes.
Is there any reason we
You
can't
accept
vote on
his
this in
friendly amendment?
April? I'd like to know what I'm voting to advertise.
Well, that's,
Oh, that's true.
If staff is working on it, it may change.
that's true.
And
If-
I would just like to know exactly what I'm voting to advertise before we vote to advertise
If in
it.
fact language is inserted into the BLA agreement.
Fine. Final,
Just strike part 2 of your motion and
Well, can I
keep
ask
the
Mr.
part 1
Goff
of
a
your
question real
motion.
quick? What does it make
We'll be all
up?
set.
If any consolation, I've
Whether
been
we
here
have a
before.
separate agreement or what we're trying to get at here, which is no housing, goes in the BLA.
And the other stuff.
well, it's just, I think.
Does it
the problem-
functionally make a difference?
You could do
Would
it.
one be stronger than the other?
It doesn't.
I don't think one would be stronger than the other.
It's just the mechanism.
It's-
Okay,
So then we
so
don't-
my motion is now whittled down and beaten to death to have only one part, and that is for staff to develop this linking, call it the linking language between what the town has worked out on a legislative basis and the agreement itself, to make those legislative decisions binding within the context of the agreement. And we'll presumably vote to schedule a public hearing in April.
So we'll have the agreement
And
in its
whatever
current form or possibly modified if the town finds that acceptable, and a parallel agreement, whatever it takes to do all this.
and with gratitude to my colleagues, I think it was a reasonable and logical discussion.
Second.
All right, we have
May not seem
A
logical.
really
but-
amended motion and a second. Any further discussion? Phew. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
If you abstained, we would have had a problem.
He was about to ask you to repeat it, but he didn't.
Yeah, and then, you know.
All righty then. Moving right along. Amended policy 810.
Oh, that's what we worked on last month.
Yeah,
I forgot I did print out copies here.
Thank you.
There may be an extra one there. Where's the Art can take it? Let's see if there's an extra one. I'll get there. I read it. Thanks.
Is there an extra one down there? Yep.
pass that back up, please.
Here's Ashley, I got it. Good job.
Rules Committee.
We did meet this past month, and we worked through this language as requested by the board to modify appointment process to clarify it for all members of the board. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think it's pretty straightforward.
You all did a good job, thank you. I move that we adopt Board Policy 810 by recommendation of the Rules Committee. Thank you for your work.
One second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you for
I'm
doing
sorry.
that.
So,
Thank you.
Who seconded that?
Kier and then Christine.
Yeah, I shouldn't put forward motions on your work.
Hey, if it
sorry.
gets the work done, I don't care.
I thought you'd be glad that we didn't have to discuss it, so.
Thank you for that. Pole-mounted speed display signs.
I was hoping that I would be able to get these permit applications pulled together yesterday and today, but I've been working on other items that are time sensitive. I did get communication from the state with what land use permit application needs to be provided, including an example of one prepared by the Plains. So that's up there on my list. Hopefully at your next meeting, if I can get that done quickly and get into VDOT and they get back to me quickly, then I might be able to also bid out the stuff. Have them both ready for you for your next meeting.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Classification and compensation study, Ms. Jewell.
Yes, we are making some good progress on this now. Department heads were to give us updated job descriptions by the middle part of January. However, there were a couple of county departments who continued to work on those until the end of February. At this point, we have received 31 updated job descriptions, all of which have been provided to the consultant. The consultant has finished their review and reassessment of 14 of those 31 job descriptions. 17 reviews are continuing by Baker Tilly. So I'm expecting by the mid to late part of this month to receive an update from Baker Tilly, and then we'll be able to provide you a comprehensive update at that time or thereafter.
And so it might come up during one of your budget work sessions or?
It may, yes.
This obviously plays into the budget.
Yes.
Congratulations on the work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Progress.
Sounds good.
All right.
Can we take 5?
Yes. Recess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Get this down here. We have, I think, the bulk of the building committee here. We're missing Mr. Waters, it looks like, but.
He is, I believe, online.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So we have a bit of a question and answer period that we have to kind of go through. We are still, I guess you can see that the recap of the efforts, you want me to go over that or do?
Does he need to?
I can just do it real quick, I guess.
Building committee order?
Recap efforts
Do you
today.
want to just formally convene the building committee just so?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very informal with the building committee. We'll now convene the building committee since we have a majority here. We have the quorum. And I guess, do we need to formally adopt the agenda?
No.
All right, the ayes have it.
So we're formal, but we're not.
Right.
Well, and to the extent that we don't take minutes at the building committee, I don't really
Right.
think it's important to do that. But.
I'm probably going to gloss over some of this, but to recap of the direction to date, the Board of Supervisors, of course, has appointed the building committee, and that's for us to kind of go through some of the minutia that's involved in the different projects that we've got going. And the main thing is the building envelopes, if you will, of both this building and the sheriff's office complex and the now the old church next door, known by various things, but it's you know, the old town hall, the old church. So what we have is we're working on getting with, we had the architect on line with us at the last meeting that we, looks like we'll be using, or could very well use for the work on that building. And we'll be doing some of the same thing, attack the problems on the exterior to try and save the building from any further deterioration, and at the same time work on the scope of what we do on the interior, present that back to the board so that we envision, if you will, a building that's quite flexible so that it can be used for, you know, multiple uses. I mean by that 2 or 3 different office keepers. It could be one of the constitutional officers. It could be the extension agent office. So that's what we're looking at doing there.
If I can interject real quickly.
Yes, sir, please
Came
do.
together very quickly. I did meet with Mr. Machado at the 310 Gay Street. Mr. Macklow was there and kind of guided us through based on his knowledge. And so he walked the entire building, and he's now working on a scoping document to bring back to the building committee.
Right, okay. Thank you, sir. But I guess the biggest thing on our agenda right now as a building committee is we don't have a path forward on the scale and shape, size, location of a potential new courthouse building. And we discussed various ways to try and get the board involved in that so that we have a definite, agreed upon process forward. And it looks like the simplest thing would be to get like Racy Engineering here to stake the corners, if you will, and maybe even fly a low-flying balloon or two for the peaks of the proposed building, so that you get some kind of concept of scale, if you will, because we probably spend more time on it than anybody has, but that doesn't mean that we actually have that idea of the scale of the proposal.
How hard would it be to organize that, and how far in advance?
Well,
We should pick a date or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we may have to have 2 or 3 days because of rain or something, but I guess the first thing is to find out if Racy or somebody that already has some experience with the property, that's the only reason they make sense, is to find out when they might be able to do it, and to, you know, at that point, set up something, if the board is agreeable to a process like that.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
Thank you. Please interject and get me steering on the right path here.
No, you are. The issue is, what do you need to make a decision? So I know that, you know, like me, I can look at a 3D model, I can look at a 2D drawing, and I can visualize it. But, you know, not everyone has got the architecture or engineering background that Gary and I do. All right? So different people see things differently. What is it that you need to be able to make a decision on the general scope of the building? All right? Not the final details, that's the next phase. All right? And so the idea we had was to put down stakes, have a party,
Right.
a picnic, all right? The public can come and they can kind of see what they can see what it is.
It's awesome.
All right. Now, Gary it wouldn't cost very much money. Gary was talking, they can get the same surveyor to come out here and plot the corners. All right.
Yeah,
But
we'd also be able to see height in some, like, you do something to, kind of like they did with the cell towers. Like,
you could do that. Depending on the height is like when I did this for my barn, this is why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You know, so we laid out the corners, all right, because my wife has a hard time visualizing 3D, right? Then we took the surveyor stake and we stuck it up. He said, the top of that is where the peak is going to be, all right? And she's looking at the kitchen window. Okay, that's good, that's good. Actually built, I didn't know it was gonna be that big. So what do you need to feel comfortable that you can make the decision at this level of concept?
And it seems like the two very high level things that people, members of the public and I guess our board members have commented on is like the fundamental location, right? And then second would be the size relative to the stuff around it. And presumably you can address both of those just through a combination of survey stakes and balloons or, I mean, to me, those are the big picture things that I think it would be really helpful for people to see that.
Right. I mean,
Location and scale.
right. And we can go farther, but I don't really want to,
But
it's gonna add a lot of money if we have to put up like a sheet for this is how big the wall is.
Mr. Glenny pointed out, there is no replacement for the actual building, right? So it's all estimates and trying to provide a concept of what it, give you a sense, but no 2 or 3 balloons and stakes are going to,
I know.
and
Right.
that together with some images and, just trying to
So
look at things in perspective.
specifically make Gary's point, the one option that's favored, all right, probably is a little too close to the treasurer's office than what will eventually actually be. And I'm talking 5, 10, maybe 15 feet. It's not that big a deal. But you'll be able to get a concept from the stakes and the balloon, all right? And then those decisions are in the next phase of architecture, working that out as well as what the exact exterior looks like.
Okay.
What we need to do is get the virtual reality glasses
I know.
out.
A hall.
I said there were more expensive options, but
I think for me, we have two really different proposals, which are, the one which is court functions, clerk, and Commonwealth's attorney, and then court functions only. So what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is, what do we need?
Well,
We need the first, because if you don't.
The first
start
meeting,
the court functions, if you will.
Sure, yeah.
The thing is, it's all spread out now, and you've got a security issue, but you don't have a security issue as long as nothing ever happens. But if something ever happens, in hindsight, you'll say, I wish I'd have. But if we only build the court-only functions, then we don't have the space, the clerk's office here freed up that we might could flip somebody into, or the space across the street. We have some serious work that needs to be done in both the Commissioner of Revenue's office and the Treasurer's office, and they've got to have somewhere to go. That the work that I see happening, because I've been involved in some renovation jobs, they need to be out of there, because we're going to find something that we didn't know about. We can try to guess, we can try to be prepared, but we're going to be making a mess in there. It's going to be noisy, and,
I think generally what you found was that the footprint wasn't too much different between
It's not.
court only and a full thing. It was
Well,
just
no, we
2 stories,
I
right?
thought, my recollection is when we did the court only, our point was, we still need another 10,000 square foot building.
Right.
And that's why we stopped.
Eventually,
pursuing that
yeah.
option.
That's where I was getting to. The footprint's not too much different,
Right.
and you need another building.
Right. Yeah, this
Right.
is what I was reading right here.
Right.
And so what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is the space needs versus the flow and how we can get it all done so that my main concern is, and I believe that, and I've said this before, I would rather not put something on the end of this building, and I'd rather build something separately. Personally, that's what I would prefer. But so that we make sure that we're not making it too big, but definitely not too small. 10% too small would be bad, in my mind, than 15% too big.
Given that we're still using this 1833 building.
That's right. And so that's what I'm just trying to wrap my mind around. And I believe at the last meeting, you suggested that we needed maybe to drill back there to see if that it's even likely a possibility.
Yeah,
or at
I'm
least confirmed.
I'm just used to hitting rock. And rock's not a bad thing if you're drilling a well. Rock is not a good thing if you're trying to dig down for a building foundation.
But again, when we had 3 options, all right? You had the courthouse kind of facing towards Gay Street, courthouse facing towards Warren Avenue, which were all of the above, all right? And that is by far the simplest in the domino theory, okay? And then, because it frees up how we move stuff around, it makes that problem a whole lot less. And then you have the court only, which we never did find another spot yet for the other large 10,000 square foot building. Right.
And at your last meeting, you agreed, relative to the conversation started with 310 Gay Street, the old church, that should be a priority, and the group is moving forward with design so that it could serve as a flex space and be available, hopefully, well before a courthouse would be built and enable the clerk and court functions to move so that these buildings are ready to be a flex space. So it would accelerate your opportunity to work on the treasurer and commercial revenue. Yeah. So that's kind of a parallel, but it would accelerate the ability to work on those existing buildings if you do the church first, which I think the conversation decision you came to at your last meeting to, let's do that. That's why the design is.
No decision's been made. Most likely that would be the extension office in there long-term at the end of the
What
project.
you're saying about this church?
Yeah.
That's the only one that's big enough to take the extension.
And county meeting space, which is what
And
they
county
have
meeting
now
space.
at the extension office.
And this could be the county meeting space as well.
Can I ask you, so let's pretend we were to go with option 2, which is 19,000 square foot that includes clerk and Commonwealth's attorney. In a best case scenario, is there a flow that happens and gets all the buildings done and then the people in the building? Is there a flow chart that basically says this is how we could do this? And this is what these spaces could
Is there
end
a
up?
chart?
No.
Or no?
Not necessarily.
There is
Yeah.
one in the heads
Yeah.
of the building committee.
And that has changed
And
at
that's
the
what-
last meeting relative to the church, allowing things to
Right.
happen in parallel.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to visualize when you were saying, and I totally agree with you, how do we move forward? And it's like, I feel like I don't have a grasp yet of how these chess pieces move around. I mean, it's pretty complicated, complex.
So
As you guys are
I
aware.
guess the answer, if you do the bigger version of the courthouse, all right, that's got the clerk and the Commonwealth attorney, all right, you free up his building and the clerk's office for other space dominoes.
For basically assuming other people don't move, which isn't a guarantee,
Right.
county administration and building zoning and all that
Right.
would then be able
And
to
so-
move out of lease space, and cooperative extension would be able to move out of lease space.
Right, so by doing that,
Yep.
you allow Gary to come back to the campus. You can address, when we finalize that, the registrar's needed areas which don't fit where she is now, okay? So, but the point is, as we've said, that provides swing space to do the work on the other buildings, all right? This building probably will not free up until that new courthouse is ready,
Yeah.
Right.
all right?
We've got to have continuity of function.
We don't want to take away the court function.
Right.
So county administration's not moving into town until the courthouse is done.
Right.
Building zoning is not moving until the courthouse is done.
And I have to say, for me, I mean, I understand that you'd like the big picture, but it's also a fluid picture. And for my part, I did not anticipate that the courthouse design would take as long as it does. But it's a constituent-led process. It's a public-led process. And we can only move as fast as the will is there for us to move. And I do think, although it is a long process, that the payoff is that it will be done well.
Right.
And things will be anticipated, and we will make diligent decisions, and we're in a good financial position to make those decisions. So I do think that, it is taking longer to get the courthouse design completed than I thought, but I think that was maybe just naivete on my part. But the beauty of that is we have been able to pivot and start to consider more of the use of the church to be able to work on multiple fronts instead of just concentrating on courthouse. Because those
So
needs
there-
are just as urgent, if not more so.
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap, right now, there's going to be three things going on at the same time, right? You have the renovation of the church, the exterior on the old jail, and the design of the new courthouse. Those things are pretty much in parallel, It's hard to get more parallel than that.
And when the jail is done, the exterior work is just gonna start shifting this way.
Right, exactly. And the problem with once you leave the jail, the problem with the exterior work, it becomes noisy, either for court functions here, which cause schedule problems. There's gonna be time constraints on the treasurer's office, and she'll allow construction, and same with the commissioner. So you got a whole bunch of detailed scheduling things to do, but that all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Worked out.
And the space needs, was there a 2020 Wiley Wilson space study? Is that right?
Yes, and
Yes.
then we've gone through and validated, a lot of those were estimates. Doug and I went through to the stakeholders and revalidated what some of those were. The only one we haven't done yet is the sheriff.
That was gonna be my next question, was that you guys then sort of asked the folks, hey, this is what Wiley Wilson gave us, and they said, this is what we think we would need?
Right, so
Gotcha.
for example, where the deltas were,
Yeah.
from what Wiley Wilson said, there was a little bit more space for the Commonwealth Attorney, a little less space for the building office, a little more space for the registrar, and everyone else was about the same.
But pretty close.
So how do we?
Sort of?
And I have decent confidence that there's enough room in the sheriff's office / former jail for the sheriff. There are some repurposing needs to happen.
Correct.
And HVAC work was happening today to help facilitate.
And there's an issue of possession is 9/10 of the law, so.
Well, I should also say, I didn't want to give the impression that I thought you guys were moving slowly. On the contrary, I think you guys are making
It's the necessary speed.
progress. And I 100% agree with you that I do not think that this process should be inorganically sped up at all. Because this is the biggest project we probably will have ever embarked upon dollar-wise.
Well, the lemonade on the lawn was my idea, so if y'all think that's a good idea, I will move forward planning it and getting it staked out.
And your thinking is to do it on multiple dates, just so that.
Well, once the stakes are there, people can wander around anytime they want, but there would be a date that the board can show up and be, a facilitated discussion, and balloons are only gonna fly so long, I mean, you can't just leave them out there and let the wind have.
And we talked about setting up a computer within the old admin building, so people that they want to see the 3D while they're kind of looking at the state.
Yeah.
Would be nice if the citizens had a couple of days where they knew somebody from the building committee was gonna be here, or, to actually talk to them about what they're seeing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Maybe we can shoot for a Saturday in April or something when the weather's nicer and
And I remember you and I ran into each other down the cell phone
the
stuff.
balloon flying days, yes.
Once you fly a balloon, people really show up.
Yeah.
That was a big balloon.
And that was
Whether you
without
serve
the lemonade.
lemonade or
As
not.
long as DOD doesn't show up and try and shoot it down.
It's a simple human reaction, it's like, oh, balloon. But yeah, like the cell tower thing, I couldn't believe it. It's like people were lined up
Yep.
on roads all over the place, so it'll get some attention.
So the space like the jail, the old jail that's not being used really because of the HVAC and water and all that good stuff, is that factored in for use later?
Well, yes and no. Parts of the old jail that are cells are made like a jail.
Right.
And there's only so many uses for that in their storage.
Right.
Right? The other parts of the jail are being, the booking area, that's a deputy bay now, right? So it's being used. It's not high functioning, and it could be better. The kitchen upstairs and the little day room / where they ate and stuff, that is high opportunity, but it's upstairs, right? So there's some limitations on what can be up there. So that's where the sheriff can expand, and any sort of things that don't have, storage and things like that can move out of her more occupied spaces to there. And then she probably have some office spaces up there that, as long as she has alternate office spaces downstairs for, somebody who comes in and needs that. That's why I think that space will accommodate her needs into the future.
Well, it would probably be appropriate to put the emergency service coordinator in there and isolate it away from the billing office too. But yeah, that's easy.
Somewhere. Yeah.
So then do we need to kind of vote on which rendition we want to stake? And which balloon to fly, like
The-
which way it'll be?
So it'll
which way
be
facing?
it'll be too confusing to stake more than one.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
think the two that include everything are pretty close.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
relatively close. The only
And- and
difference is which way
19
they,
versus 22.
Yeah.
and their heights are about the same.
Okay, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, great. So we don't, clearly, we don't need to take action on whether to fly balloons, right? I mean,
Oh, I didn't mean actually.
We'll just do it.
I just meant.
just do it. That's awesome. Thanks a lot. That's a great idea.
Yeah, thanks for doing
And
that.
and it seems like you'll get, for anyone in the pub, who is a member of the public who hasn't focused on what a big deal this potentially is, hopefully it'll draw their attention and they'll come out and see.
Yeah, and, you know, by moving slowly and determinedly, prices have went down on some construction materials.
Is that amazing?
I've read that lumber's gonna crash, but there probably won't be much lumber in this
Not
building.
much lumber, yeah. So somehow we'll get it on social media and newspapers and stuff like that to let people know
Well,
when and
we'll put a
where.
press release out and the papers will do something, I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay, great.
You may read about it over in Standardsville.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David.
Yeah, I guess, at this point, we'll
Adjourn?
consider an adjournment for the building committee.
Do we need a vote?
Sheila, see if we can-
Thank
Yeah,
you.
if we can get a
Or
vote.
11.
I move that we adjourn the building committee.
Any seconds? Seconds to adjourn the building committee?
I oppose, keep working.
The ayes have it.
All right.
Thank you, Doug, Paige, and Dale for joining us
Thank
today.
you. Thanks, Dale. Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Doug. Thanks, Paige.
New business. Restrict issuance of land disturbance.
Yes, received an email from the treasurer asking whether the board might be interested to expand local ordinance as it relates to the permits that we can withhold if people have not paid their taxes. And your zoning ordinance right now in section 170-129 identifies a few instances where that can happen. And it basically says that that an application is not deemed to be on file if there are delinquent real estate taxes until all delinquent real estate taxes are paid. But that is well, it says, sorry.
Local permits. Let's see. Oh, we're sure, zoning applications,
Yeah,
and you're
so-
saying it should be
right.
broader than zoning, it should be,
Right, well,
building
it
or
can
anything.
be, right?
yeah.
So the leveraging state code 15.2.2286B I put in the packet, and it says that you can do this for special exception, special use, variance, rezoning, or other land disturbing permit, including building permits, erosion and sediment control permits.
Okay.
So the question is the board interested in modifying local ordinance to expand to the greatest extent that the state allows you to withhold permits if people haven't paid
Is
taxes?
it no longer, currently it's part of our zoning ordinance. And
Right.
so you're saying it would become just a county ordinance, what, that would be duplicated as part of the zoning ordinance and then elsewhere?
Right, so I haven't really thought through with Mr. Goff how we would do that. There's a few different ways. You have an E&S ordinance chapter, so you could
Yeah.
include that part in there. You have a building code ordinance chapter,
I
you could
see.
include that part there.
So you
Another way is to put it into chapter 151, which is your taxing chapter, and
That's
say,
that makes most
for all the above, and maybe it's cross-referenced in both, because when people are looking at your zoning ordinance, or looking for an item related to the zoning ordinance, they probably go to the zoning ordinance chapter, and they never look at the taxing chapter. But
Okay.
but before I spend any time on it other than this, I wanted to gauge the board's interest to expand this opportunity.
I mean, the treasurer,
She thinks it would help her with
Yeah.
collections.
she's been doing a phenomenal job on collections. I mean, our delinquency rate seems to be improving and we're collecting bad debt and she and her team are really aggressive and if she thinks this is another tool that'll improve upon the great progress she's already made, I'm all for it. I'd move that we give more work to our county staff to develop an ordinance amendment. Would it, you want us to, it says to be considered a public hearing. Shouldn't we first see what it looks like?
You certainly can.
Especially since we're not
I
meeting
would
on
just
April.
say to draft something. I don't know that we
Okay.
need to put in budget season, put
Sure.
all of us under undue pressure. But it sure seems like a sensible approach. So it's basically a motion just for you to proceed. And if whether it's dropping in something in 151 or elsewhere, however you guys determine it's most efficient.
So the recommended action, I think if you strike to be considered for public hearing at April 3rd, 2023
Yeah.
meeting, probably is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'll second. And do you mind if I ask a question? Can you just sort of recap really quickly how this language is more broad than 170-129?
There's no, 129 would not impact land disturbing permits or building permits.
Got it.
It's just at all.
Yeah. And, okay,
So it's almost, frankly, it's,
even though it references that code section.
Right, and it says those pursuant to the authority
Yeah.
granted by that.
And so, but we haven't granted it in our own zoning ordinance.
it's
Right.
potentially a loophole right now, the way it is written. And I'm
Yeah,
glad that she brought it up.
Yeah, totally.
And so these, building permits come up all the time.
Yep.
And our zoning ordinance does not require a zoning permit every time you get a building permit, even though most do. This one doesn't.
Yeah,
Any further discussion?
super young.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Fire and Rescue Mutual Aid.
We received a request from Warren County to update the mutual aid agreement with them. You can see the document. They envision this to be adopted by all the adjacent counties as shown here. Mr. Polster told me that this is sent to the association for them to review as well. And I think our service agreement says that we'll do that and that they can comment on it, but they'll follow whatever the board says. It's pretty boilerplate, quite frankly. But I couldn't act on this myself, I didn't think, given that it was an agreement and changing. Otherwise, I would have just signed it and said, we're just leveraging state law and doing what everybody knows mutual aid is, and that we're not charging each other for things unless there's some very odd circumstance.
But we don't know what the revisions are exactly?
I think the old one is like from the 80s or something. Probably was typed on a typewriter.
Madam Chair, point of order. I just got a message. Somebody's wanting to know why the audio didn't return after our break from the recess.
Well, it seems to be working. Only have 2 people on.
I don't know.
Maybe they got kicked off.
Oh.
I don't know.
And Mr. Waters just thanked you for thanking him.
Yep.
No, whoever's, they're not up there.
Although we do advertise a statement on our agenda that we don't guarantee
Oh,
that it's
someone-
A
here.
visitor just came in. I would move to authorize the county administrator to execute the updated mutual aid agreement with Warren County following review and approval as to form by the county attorney.
I'll second.
So the county attorney has not reviewed it yet?
No.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
So if he doesn't find it approvable, then it doesn't get signed.
Right.
Right, well, subject to the,
Subject to,
subject to the strict language of the motion, I support it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. VTC grant.
Yes, the Virginia Tourism Corporation has opened a series of grant opportunities, and two of our local organizations or local events have applied for grants from VTC, one being Sperryfest and the other being the Rappahannock Farm Tour. Sperryfest applied for a $5,000 grant, and these grants are largely focused on increased marketing of events. Sperryfest has applied for $5,000. The Farm Tour has applied for $10,000. Each grant requires a one-for-one match. And so Sperryfest, regardless of if they are awarded this grant, regardless of where they get the funds from, will be required to match $5,000. The Farm Tour, if they get their grant, will be required to match $10,000 regardless of the source of funds. You may recall that as a result of the increased lodging tax revenue, the fiscal 23 budget set aside $10,000 held within the tourism department as restricted only funds for the purpose of tourism. The match that's being requested of the county by these two events would be a good use of those restricted funds within the budget if the board sees fit to do so. Sperryfest has requested that the county match their grant application of $5,000 with a $5,000 match. The Farm Tour has requested that their $10,000 application be matched by the county with $3,500. And so the request here is, or the consideration for the board is, would you like to use some of the $15,000 set aside in the budget for tourism restrictions to go towards these grant matches?
So that's, so $15,000 was set aside in the 23 fiscal year budget, and that $15,000 was really just a placeholder because isn't the set aside amount dynamic based on the actual revenue?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Actual expenditures.
Yes.
Okay. So have we earned greater than $15,000 than we budgeted as a set aside?
I think we're on pace to collect at least the restricted amount that equals the tourism budget plus this $15,000.
Okay.
I just have to say, I've had some experience with this, on the other side of the bench as someone coming to a locality asking for tourism dollars. And I was required to submit a budget and state what I was going to use the funding for. And then after the event was over, I was required to show how I had spent the funds because it is public money. And I don't find myself able to consider this diligently today without a budget from each of the requesters as to how they intend to spend the funding and, a promise to follow up after the funds are expended. I participated in special purpose local option sales tax funding in Georgia for a farmer's market down there, which is specifically a local sales tax that is earmarked for tourism dollars. And as an applicant, I was required in the city where we live to submit a budget and make an appeal to the board in person.
I think it makes sense, knowing that you have this structural imbalance in your budget right now with the increased lodging tax. It does make sense to have a standardized process going forward. It's not a luxury of a problem that you've had in the past, but you do have it now. And I do think there should be some structure as much as possible to make sure that the money is invested for those things that are appropriate.
We didn't discuss this, but in my past time on the board, there was an agency in the county that did this very same thing. They asked for increased funding, and when we asked for a review of their budget, they withdrew their request.
And I went back to look to old farmers market emails yesterday to say, am I remembering this correctly? And I don't have the email I sent, but I have the email I got back from the town manager, and I said, and I'm sure it wasn't elaborate, it was just that we anticipate painting a sign, it's gonna cost $900, and here's who's gonna do it, and here's how big it will be. And incidentally, the immediate feedback is, that sign's too big, you've got to make it smaller. Which we did, and some advertising dollars and things like that. But a very simple budget in Excel showing how we intended to spend the money, and then a follow-up after the event is over. I think, we need to be diligent. This is still public money.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, so we have this restricted bucket of money that we're gonna have going forward, and we don't have, as Gary mentioned, a plan for it. Would this be something that the Rules Committee, policies and procedures? I mean, is
Sure,
it-
I mean, we'd be happy to
Because
take it on, or I could work on it on my own. It's not a big lift, I don't think. And, I mean, do we have to spend it within the year that we
No.
collect it? No, I mean,
but,
see, that's the thing.
Staff's idea was that if you're going to use this, a great way to use it is to lever other dollars. If you can use these restricted dollars to double them with some other state grant, then that's really good, because you're bringing more dollars into the county that are going to get spent probably in the county and pushed back out.
Well, and I look around at a lot of the counties around us do restaurant weeks. I wish we did a restaurant week. I don't know who would want to start that. Maybe businesses in Rappahannock. But, and then, Christmas in Little Washington isn't on here. The 4th of July fireworks aren't here. Those definitely bring in a lot of folks every year too, so.
Is it time sensitive and,
So I wanted to know, good question.
The grants were due last week, and so the applicants have applied for their grant, and they have said, if we get this grant, we'll provide a match. And again,
They will provide the match.
correct, the applicant will
Not
provide
we,
the match,
us.
not the county.
Yeah.
So
we could.
regardless of
we
the
go back
source.
to them and just say, it says
Send us
farm
a
to its
spreadsheet.
berry fuzz, just tell us.
Very interesting. How are you going to use the money?
Yeah.
And they have had to prepare that information for VTC, so
Yeah.
they should be able to give that to us
Yeah.
easily.
Okay, so I think it sounds like, I mean, I don't know how long it'll take them to get a response from VTC, but if we table this until next month, it should be okay. And I agree with Ms. Smith, it's reasonable to get backup for expenditure of public dollar.
These restricted dollars are only likely to expand over time.
Right.
And so having
We
a
hope.
policy in place.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Plus, I think that moving forward, I don't want to look sort of arbitrary or capricious with just handing out money. I mean, it's like if we have clear guidelines for how we do it, what we do, when we do it, and then everybody can know, it's a totally fair, level playing field.
Yeah.
So that it's just, yeah, we've got this money, this is great for tourism, and here are the rules.
Yeah,
This is
I
how we
mean,
do it.
the best time to do it is while you're working on your budget. But these grants that come up from time to time, they don't always fit into that budget cycle, and you want to be flexible in some ways, but structured at the same time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire levy bill submission guideline and guidance. Is that you?
So at the, excuse me, last fire levy meeting, we, has everybody had a chance to sort of go over this and have a look
Yeah.
at it?
Yep.
Let's see, let me just draw this up here. It seemed like a,
Seems pretty straightforward.
really, really straightforward and something that we've been talking about now for a year, and it finally got done, and I think it reads well, and I think if you guys have any questions, Chair Stenner wasn't there, so Mr. Brady chaired the meeting, so the discussion was really limited to just kind of approving the expenditures, but
And the group looked at the draft from the chiefs at the prior meeting, and then that draft got dropped into the kind of the formal language at the last meetings, which made it easy to move forward. Now, with that said, the cost for coloring books for the kids and whatnot, even though it didn't technically fit in the categories in the past, my recollection is that the Fire Levy Board accepted the expense anyway.
Yeah.
So, because it's the right thing to do, this gets straight with that. The travel is a little bit different, and that came up because the documents practically only required you to drive to a location of training. A Sperryville rescue person took a train, which probably saved money, but it brought questions as whether that's acceptable or not.
and then there was the question of travel and how would we make sure that people weren't flying on the Concorde, which doesn't exist anymore, but the point being, how do we get the most economical? And I think Mr. Glennie came up with good language for that, and I think that,
It's just you have to get approval.
yeah, and it just has to be reasonable and the most economical. And so I think that
With the
that kind of
difficulty of
covers
getting
it.
trained, I think anything
Yeah.
we can do to help with that is good.
So the way the process works is the Fire Levy Board is charged with developing this guidance, recommending to the board for the board's consideration, and then these rules are in effect for all the companies when they come and submit their bills that would formulate their forward-year budget. And with that, these are dated to go into effect this past January. There's no reason why we would have to wait, and any bills that they have for coloring books and plastic fire hats or travel that was between January and now, there's no reason why they shouldn't be appropriate.
Okay. So just, you
Motion.
did a good job. Thank
Yeah.
you. I move that we go ahead and adopt these new guidelines as amended.
Both.
A motion and a
Yeah, so
second.
there's guidelines and then guidance to help you understand the guidelines, but they go together.
Okay.
That was a second, Mr. Fraser.
Yes, if it's for both, yes.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank
Any
you.
opposed? Thank you for doing that. All right. Board committee reports.
Okay, well, we had our little building committee meeting so that you've already got a brief synopsis of what we talked about at the last meeting and what we're looking forward to working on in the next months. So I would like to say that not every meeting, but quite a few of our meetings have been well attended by citizens, just interested people. I think it's a good thing. We certainly, again, I think that's one of our greatest fears, and we all talk about it at different times. We don't want to get out in front of this board, and we don't want to get out in front of the county. And unfortunately, that didn't happen, I don't think, but I just don't think that at one meeting that there was some, angry pitchfork wielding members of society here. They just got some misinformation. So we'd like to try to avoid as much of that as possible in the future and keep working.
Recreational facilities.
So we've been very busy. We've now got many different subcommittees, and we are working diligently to move into spring with so many people going to be using the park. And one of the big projects that we're sort of kind of working on now is clearing up the trails, which is going to be fantastic. Yeah, I'm just really proud of the work that the board has been doing there, and I think I mentioned before that thanks to Gary for pulling it together to get that fence built, which has been fantastic, and we approved the pickleball lines, which we
Huge
had
accomplishment.
which we had the money for. It's been sitting in the bank account for 2 years, which was great. We had a unanimous vote there, I believe. So just really thrilled with how much progress we're making, and it's just great.
Is
Powder
there
Stack,
any-
April 15th?
Yes, Powder Stack, April
15th.
15th, yes.
Is there any concern about the noise that pickleball creates?
Been seeing that on Fox
And
News.
so I've seen it in quite a few places, and having served on that board, I have to say I was a little surprised that you all approved the painting of the pickleball courts.
So many people wanted it, and we'll see how it goes. And I think
Isn't there
right
certain
now,
hours or
people
something?
are already playing pickleball there. So there's
Right.
like this stuff. So the deal is that we're going to paint the pickleball lines as soon as it gets warm. The thing is that you can't use the nets that are there. So you got to go to the county administrator's office. You got to get these nets. You got to bring them. You got to set them up. It takes about 45 minutes. Then you start to play. Then you got to take them down, and then you got to take them back.
Barrier to entry.
There is barrier to entry.
Okay.
So there is a dedicated group of folks, and they've got chats, and they kind of figure out when they're going to be there. But the stuff that you hear about, like on WTOP, what's going on in Arlington, is just that is on a
Over the top.
1 to 10, it's on a 10, and that's what we're trying to avoid. We've got the neighbors who are incredible and incredibly
I
patient.
just want to make sure that we're staying on the straight and narrow.
I'm with you
It's
there.
been,
The point is to be sympathetic.
yeah, the fence helps a
Yeah.
lot, and
The fence should help.
I remember those heated tennis versus pickleball discussions, and I did not envy your work on that.
Well, it
authority.
was all, at the end, it came down, it was everybody was good with it. And now the discussion, which is going to turn in about the playground rehabilitation, has a ton of energy and a lot of public
Good.
interest. And I feel just so thrilled about that because it's really invigorating for the community. I think so many people are passionate about it, and I think that there's a lot that can be done there. It would be exciting.
Good, it needs to be done.
Yeah.
The pirate ship was new about the time the library was built.
Now, did you
But
expect more than 30
that is
years?
all wooden structure and should need regular maintenance and
Yeah,
likely
yeah, totally.
replacement as
So
well.
you don't expect more than
That
30
I don't,
years
I
out of a
think we
pirate
have
ship?
more than gotten our use out of the pirate ship structure.
Yeah, my children.
With many, many thanks to I think it was Peter Kryling that originally built it.
You're absolutely right. And Peter Kryling is now on the subcommittee.
That's great.
He called me and said, I'd love to be on it. He was the mastermind of it at the beginning and with a lot of help, but I think he designed it and he's thrilled to be part of it to kind of.
That's cool.
That was a big deal and a lot of excitement in the county when that was put up.
They did something similar at the, excuse me, at the elementary school, I believe, at the same time. At least the size and scope of the project was similar, but I believe the same people were key factors in both projects.
Sure, the safety was caught up to that one.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so.
Public
things.
safety, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Public Safety Committee meeting tomorrow, right?
Yes. And we met a couple times, and that's already
In
been reported
December.
to the board.
Yep. Rules Committee,
We met and you've seen our work.
well done. Planning
you.
Commission update.
Planning Commission met and we passed along a tourist home up in Chester Gap with a recommendation for approval to the BZA. We also reviewed an accessory dwelling unit with a recommendation for approval, which we will be hearing next month here on the board. We took up the review of the access for public events. I have to say that seeing the farm tour on the agenda today did jar me to think how we're going to navigate this new territory with the farm tour. I mean, it's very challenging to figure out how to have it both ways. But we are determined to work on it and have a very light agenda so far for the 15th and anticipate being able to make headway at that time. We also reviewed the Berkeley Group scope of work and we made some recommendations and asked Mr. Curry to take it back to them.
Yeah, so I forwarded the sign ordinance with a couple of the, I think there's a minor tweak there, and then the zoning update. I had a conference online meeting with them last week or sometime, and I helped them understand where you guys were coming from. She also reviewed the meeting video, so she's working on scope now for the modified phase 1.
The general consensus was it could be pared down and
Keep
improved.
it as objective as possible in phase 1 without any subjective discussion of who can do what where, not what is the process people need to go through. That'll be phase 1 to gain some trust of the Planning Commission board citizens.
Thank you, Gary.
Fire Levy Board, do you have anything else, Van, from the meeting?
Nope, I think it was a relatively smooth meeting and got it all approved.
Cool. All right.
That's great news.
Treasurer's report, anything in the documents that we want to?
Nothing major. I mean, if you didn't look at the sales tax information when Bonnie sent it out, things are leveling off, right? So we're not seeing those major increases over last year anymore. They're at or about the same as what we've seen in the past. So we're still on track for forecast, but those gains that we've seen over the last couple of years seem to have gone away. And then cash balance is strong. We brought in a lot of revenue over this past month, and so the cash balance has kind of stayed the same.
That was a strange uptick.
It is a little bit odd. Bonnie chased that down, and it looks like there's a bunch of school revenue that came in a trunk. So that'll probably work its way back out of the system over the next couple months.
Okay. It's just a matter of time is what you're telling me.
I looked at the chart and I said, something's weird, figure that out.
Good job,
I'm glad we're all skilled at like tracing lines and trends.
Otherwise, everything seems to be tracking fine.
Cool.
Building permit, zoning, anything else in that one?
Another big month on building permits. Bonnie and I just briefly talked about real estate revenue from budget, and we see these big numbers here, but, 5 million here and there doesn't turn into a ton of new revenue.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
All right, going into matters presented by the board. Van, you want to start? I always pick on Mr. Frazier first.
I don't, well, the only thing that and I emailed Gary and we talked to Bonnie about this, was that bill that's going through the House about the farm vehicles being exempt from personal property tax.
1486 maybe?
Yeah. Have you folks heard about that? Anyway.
I think I saw it.
It doesn't seem like it would affect us much, but after, lowering the tax rate last year, and just looking forward ahead, we don't really have an idea of how much. So basically it's a bill moving to the House that would exempt,
It would broaden the category of vehicles that are considered farm vehicles.
right, so trucks, trailers, anything and how do they qualify?
I'd probably have to have farm tags or something. We might have to sort that out.
There's the two different farm tags now. The DMV is gonna take over the one that just says farm use.
Right.
Then there's the farm tag that I had at one time, that I could drive all the way to Nebraska to buy a bull, but I couldn't be caught on 66 going to work.
So there's, the general concern is it's hard to put your arms around what it would mean. And then it's also hard to get your arms around the extent to which all of our hobby farms would then be able to go out and say, oh, I got a farm vehicle.
Yeah.
And then now some large number of people are switching their vehicle registration somehow, and it's affecting your revenue in a bad way.
Yeah.
Exempting farm machine, the tractor and the implements and all that makes a lot of sense for the bottom line of a farmer.
We
It
already
gets a
do that
lot
in
more
Rappahannock.
gray. We do that, but it gets a lot more gray, and you start to expand that to, the pickup and the.
And trailers.
There's some trailer that, yeah.
Mr. Whitson?
The only thing I just want to mention, and I don't know if there's a video recording of it, but my daughter and I on the 25th of February, last Saturday, attended at Wakefield Country Day School a Scrabble School Foundation program highlighting black-owned businesses, historic black-owned businesses in Rappahannock County. It was really fascinating, and I know many of you have been here a lot longer than I have, but it included Cross Creek Cabin over in Amosville, and then Flatwood, not the Refuse and Recycling Center, but the original Flatwood Inn. And then also the Horseshoe Inn up in Sperryville, and then the other one, it just slipped my mind right there. Oh, Pine Knot Inn. Those were the ones that were highlighted. It was really awesome, and I didn't know until the presentation that DC go-go musicians used to come out and play at those
James
venues.
Brown played there.
Yeah. So it was a really great presentation. I hope there's a video recording of it that will be made public. But I applaud Nan Butler Roberts and her effort in organizing it. It was a really nice program.
Excellent.
That's just across the line in Culpeper, but there's I would have been too young to go, but supposedly, and I have very, very reputable people tell me that it really happened, that they had Marvin Gaye and I believe Diana Ross come out there one
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would have been way back in the day.
If you find out that it was videotaped, let us know.
It was really interesting.
Christine?
I just wanted to touch briefly, and I don't know how much y'all want to talk about it. We might want to talk about it at a future meeting, I think. But if anyone had a chance to watch the BZA meeting from the other week, that was, I would encourage you all to watch it, and I think we need to talk about it. In particular, the dog trainer. And I just want to say, there's some challenges to the way that whole thing sort of unfolded. And I have utmost respect, obviously, for the McNairs and the Morey family, which are the landholders who weren't actually aware of a lot of the things that were going on until they received a notice of violation from the county in the mail. And we have had a discussion about that. And, that wasn't right. But I do think we need to talk about that, and some of the things that happened and preserve the sanctity of our zoning ordinance. And what that looks like could be a number of things, and what may be the best chart forward, given sort of the conflicting stories on both sides. I'll just say, given the history of some of the properties that are already involved in that practice, maybe making sure we square it in the upcoming revisions to the zoning ordinance so that going forward we have a clear handle on it. And it's unfortunate that I don't think that it was necessarily done correctly. And I'm troubled by some of the things that I'm hearing.
Good point. You never know.
And I encourage you to watch the video so you can form your own opinions about what happened.
Mr. Frazier?
Well, I had mentioned to Mr. Curry when we first came in that perhaps we ought to, as a board, discuss whether there's going to be any action on that. And I do believe that we're going to have some discussion on an agenda coming up.
Right, so the critical time frame, if the board is of mind to appeal, then there's a 30-day clock on that. And that BZA meeting was on the 22nd. And so that decision would have to be made in time to do that. You do have a budget meeting coming up on the 15th that we could possibly convene before that. It is 5:30, I think, in the library. You could potentially convene before that, but
Well, if it's unanimous, they could do it tonight.
they could, but I don't like the idea of jumping into it without having things detailed out, and I really want to go to the girls' basketball game.
Well, and I really do
We should watch
think,
the video.
I really would like everyone to watch the video because I think it's a very telling video, and there may be some members of the community that you may want to hear from as well.
So I think what I can, if the board wants to meet to talk about this, probably the best thing to do is just for me to reach out and find a few dates that work for Art and work for the board, and then you just have a called meeting at some point in time.
Okay.
And I know Mr. Frazier said evenings are tough for him, so it might be a daytime meeting, and that might make it tough for you, but, so
We'll figure it out.
I'll be able to get with Art and.
I think, since we're talking about a BZA decision, I know that we've been talking about the role of the BZA in the county, and so maybe we could have a two-part discussion on both fronts.
Yeah, I think the role is wrapped up into the
Use
zoning
table
ordinance,
173.5.
Yeah, it's an appeal, so I think they would hear it no matter what.
That's true.
But I do think, I mean, I never thought I would be in favor of paring down their role, but I more and more I find myself in that position.
Yeah, no, you're right. I thought about that too, because regardless of whether or not we change the use table in the zoning ordinance, it is still an appeal, but it raises other questions about just being held, people being held accountable by voters as opposed to appointees, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. We should talk about our options.
Okay. Yep.
Should we include in that material that I sent
Yeah.
to Mr. Frazier and Mr. Curry about how other counties approach a recommendation for an appointment?
We can do that.
To the BZA by the circuit judge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Certainly can.
Yeah, you're the history lesson you gave on that. Probably.
Well, I predominantly have
It was
been opposed
amazing.
to it, but it looks like I may have come full circle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or maybe 180.
Okay. I will try to find a day that's not a budget work session and that fits everybody's schedule.
Yeah,
So that was the
that'd be good.
Second was the deadline?
And
February 22nd, see.
Yes, I'm with you.
So we've got 30 days.
February was on 28th.
Yeah, so the 24th might be the actual 30 days. But we want to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So in the next week or so, I'll try to schedule something.
Well, I would say right now, I've got 2 possible time slots to it. We've got a jury trial and fall year camp.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
We'll start with you, and then I'll go from there.
Oh, and there's a new restaurant moving in Sperryville, so they're open for St. Patrick's Day. You can book your reservation down there where Eric had Sperryville Trading.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's-
Really?
Yep. Yep, it's gonna, I believe it's gonna be kind of catering and events. I don't know, exactly what their hours and everything are gonna be yet, but it's great to see that space filled, and it
Wow.
seems like it'll be a good fit.
Yeah, I hear she's a caterer in the past, so, yeah, should.
Hopefully, I think she'll have her own following immediately built in, so
That's
sounds
great.
great.
The only thing I have is received a letter from Virginia Emergency Management Association and Department of Emergency Management that we probably all received, letting us know that Emergency Management Professionals Week in Virginia is March 19th through the 25th. And just wanted to make sure they designated the third week in March to honor the service and commitment of emergency management professionals and recognize their contributions to the lives, health, and safety of all who live, visit, and do business in the Commonwealth. And given our focus in the past month or so, I just thought it would be a good time to make everyone aware of that and to thank our professionals and our volunteers, our first responders, and just let them know we care.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for raising that.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Got a motion to adjourn in a
I'll
second?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, let's go watch the girls win.
Basketball game. Sorry, I owe you $10, I'm sorry.